Welcome back. Welcome to another episode of Nain Shorts, where we talk about training, and more training. It happens all the time, whether we're in the class, whether we're in the dojo, whether we're on the mat or not. Why? Because we're kind of obsessed that way, or at least I know I am. And there are a few other people out there that watch this show that train just as much, if not more. As a matter of fact, there are people, friends that we've made along the way that train multiple systems and are ranked in those systems. So we're not just talking about somebody that goes to a seminar or does 1 4-hour class and gets a certificate. No, I'm talking about people who really go into this class from a white belt and have made it up to not just first, but second, third, and even 4th degree in that particular system. And I've seen them train it, and I've seen them share videos, and I've seen them on the mat. And when they teach a specific system, they stick to it. They show you all the ins and outs. They truly know what they are talking about. Now, there was a point in the martial arts community where that was unheard of. Part of it, probably the connectivity, the technology wasn't quite there to be able to share information across different planes, different social groups, or whatever the case may be. But there was also this hard set mentality that if you're with my school, you are sticking to this school for as long as you possibly can, or as long as you live, or else you get excommunicated and you're no longer allowed through the doors of my dojo. I've heard stories like that as well. So it was a different world. Today we have a lot of cross training that happens along the way. MMA really turned that into a bigger thing where people now train not full systems, but specific parts of different arts, whether it's groundwork, whether it's stand-up fighting, clinching, all this stuff. And depending on which one you focus on, you're going to see your base, and then you grow from there. But how do we go about doing so effectively? How do we consolidate the conflicts that happen with different systems? Now, what do I mean by this? Well, depending on what you do or how similar the systems that you train are, there's going to be little or big conflicts that go along with just the simple mechanics of how you go about doing things. Say, for example, if you're doing a system that's high on kicks, you practice a whole bunch of kicks, your tournaments are kick-based, there's not a lot of punching, there's not a lot of grabs, it's just whatever you can get in, make contact with your heel, with the top of your foot, with the flat of your foot. But kicks are the majority of what you're using. Your stance is going to be a little bit different in the way that you're moving about to be able to do these kicks and utilize these combinations of kicks than it would be if you're doing, say, orthodox boxing or even Muay Thai. Your stance alone right there is going to change. Now, what about all the other intricacies? You're learning all this knife and all these weapon stuff, but you're fighting empty hand. How do those two mesh? How does one go into the other? And how do we make sure that at the right time we use the right system or the right thing? I'm not saying cross-training is a bad thing. I actually encourage cross-training. You definitely need to open your mind to a lot of different possibilities because your system may not cover all of them. Or maybe it does. I don't know. I don't know all the systems, and I definitely have not trained them all. I'm ranked in 2 different systems. I've done FMA, and I do Kaju Kempo. So for me, that's just it. That's it. I've been exposed to many other systems, and I try to incorporate as much as I can from the knowledge that I gain from those, but I don't actually practice them on a regular basis. I do FMA and Kaju Kempo. Those I do practice on a regular basis. But there's one thing that I haven't quite gotten into as much as I should. And that is practicing them together. Because, at least logically, it makes sense that if I want to blend these things and have them come up naturally in a real life situation, then I need to actually practice blending them together. I can't keep them separate. And I wonder, these practitioners that we know of that have ranks in all these other systems, how do they go about doing it? Now, we've met other people in FMA who practice multiple FMA systems, and we've heard that, oh, in long range, I use this system. In medium range, I use this other system. In close range, I use a third. But again, without practicing the actual transition from one to the other, you're probably not going to be able to make it manifest at that time. Or maybe you practice them so much, each individually, and give them the same amount of attention and importance that it doesn't really matter, because wherever you find yourself, whatever comes out is going to come out, and because you trained it well enough, it's going to be proper. It's going to work, or at least be 80% efficient versus a lot less than that, because you never even trained them to that degree. So is that the criteria for it? Do you necessarily have to just give it enough time for each one of those systems in order for them to come out naturally? And if so, how much time? How long do you have to be in something before it comes out naturally? And then does it have to be the equal amount of time for each one of those schools for them to be able to then blend together? That's definitely one way of doing it. Giving it equal amount of practice for each one, which means you have to practice all of them equally, or at least with enough proficiency that it regularly happens and it regularly comes out when you need it to. Are there any other ways? Can we start looking then at the mechanical aspect of things, of the human body? How does the human body work? Maybe it requires you to understand how your body works, how proficient you are at using that tool, because the human body, let's consider it a weapon. That's the true weapon that drives everything, whether it's a tool or empty hands, that's your weapon. And if you're proficient at using it, then maybe it doesn't matter how long you spend training on any one of these arts, something good's gonna come out, and the blending happens naturally and organic. Or do you really have to take the time to actually walk through the steps? I'm not 100% sure. For me personally, I have to take the time to actually blend the two together. And hopefully, if I do it proficiently enough, that's going to come out in real life. Because again, I've seen different practitioners, and you can see the changes in their styles as they move to different ranges or different situations. I've also seen practitioners who, until it happens, you don't really see the differences until you realize, oh hey, that piece right there was this, but that other piece was something else. The footwork was karate, but the punch was Wing Chun. All of a sudden, you really have to evaluate what it is that you're trying to accomplish with these arts. And for me, I'm just trying to blend them to make sure that they actually come out, and they're both useful. There's a whole bunch of great information out there, but it's how we take it and how we then start practicing it that it's going to make it useful or not. Because again, there are natural conflicts between styles, but how do we get about them? Train them, give them equal amount of time, and then that actually brings up a point. When is the best time to then start cross-training? Now, my teacher had to kick my ass out of the class in order for me to start doing something else, because he felt that it was the time to do so. But are all instructors really that perceptive to say, okay, you're ready to do something else other than what we're doing here, to broaden your horizons and to fill in some gaps that you might be missing? Or to be savvy enough to say, hey, you're not ready. You haven't learned this enough. You haven't practiced it enough. You're not proficient enough just yet to move on to something else. And at this point in your training, if you try to go and learn a whole different system alongside this one, it's just going to be detrimental to your growth, and more likely you're going to quit both. Hopefully our instructor is honest enough and perceptive enough to be able to tell us that. But if not, what are we really looking for? First of all, do we have the proficiency in this one art to be able to teach it to somebody else. Maybe not at master level, but definitely enough to be able to get the point across, not just the movements, but the ideas, concepts that go along with it, the whys behind why you're moving the way you are. If you have that, it's probably a good bet that you will be able to not only keep them separate, but also how to incorporate both of them so you can start growing from there. You see it all the time. People go to seminars, people go to other schools, they get taught something, and the very first thing out of their mouth is, that's not how we do it. And instead of taking in the information, they start telling the person they're training with or anyone who will listen to them, this is how we would do it. So it sort of dismisses the whole lesson altogether because you're not all set up to take in this new information. You don't know your system well enough to be able to set it aside and learn something new. Because if your first thought is, this is how we do it, well then you're not really paying attention to the person that's teaching you something. So maybe that individual isn't quite ready to learn something new or add to what they're doing, and should probably stick to what they're training, and once they get to that point, then move on to something else. Again, these are ways to self-evaluate in case your instructor isn't there to tell you whether or not it's the best thing for you at the time. That's one way of going about it. The other way about it is learning what are the connecting points between it. For me, like I said, Kaju Kempo and FMA, I have my strikes here, very fluid, but where is the connecting point? Well, for me, the structure that I create when I strike with a stick is the same as throwing a punch. So the mechanics for me are very similar in that. Other than when I'm transitioning to the other side for flowing through, does that really change? So there's some of the mechanics that are the same there. When I'm throwing horizontal strikes, we call them 3s and 9s. The 3 itself, I'm hitting with the tip of the stick. So right here on my center, I'm crossing my body, but it's the same mechanics as our close-up punch is in Kaju. So I can start seeing the relation between those two. But if I want to take it a step further, I need to start combining the different things. For example, punch art 1A. I step off the line, I parry, outside block, I kick, I come down with a hammer fist onto the tricep, which should bring the person down a little bit lower, and then I finish off with a punch to the face. That's Kaju. That's our punch art 1A. Did I do my stances as deeply as I could have? No, because that was the beginning of it. I've gotten to the point as a black belt where now I'm starting to look at the nuance of why we do what we do. What is it meant to do? Get out of line, make sure you don't get hit, double block if you need to, just in case that thing comes back or he throws something else. But now I can think of it, oh, it's also a strike. As I parry, if I do this hard enough, oh, now I'm striking with that outside block to the arm. And if I get my timing and my accuracy right, I'm destroying that elbow. So now that person's in pain, which will probably give me the time to get this kick, which will probably debilitate him enough for me to get this other strike, and then I'm finishing the fight. Now I'm thinking about the nuance behind it. But how do I combine that with FMA? Now I have a stick. The most basic idea of it, if I'm thinking of this as a strike, is as I step off and parry, oh, now I'm hitting with the stick. So now this is my strike. I can do my kick, and then I can finish off with the puño if I'm close enough, or if they're not. If for whatever reason this kick pushes them back, well, then I can finish with the length of the stick. And there's my strike. Now I'm practicing the blending of the two. But is that it? If we keep just this one idea as an example, are there different ways of doing it? Well, if we start breaking down the pieces of each individual move, we can then start a different kind of blend where we start evolving both of them together. What do I mean by this? So I parry and I strike with the stick. We've seen this before. We've seen this in Serrata. It's their basic beginning for an outside one, no kick. But is that the mentality that I was taught in my FMA? No. No, that wasn't. That's Sarada, not what we do, not the bladed mind Ronin. So if I start applying that to it, what's the difference behind it? If I take this outside block and I literally do the same move with a stick, what does it look like? This. Oh, that's a parry from the backside of the opponent's weapon. So as I step off, I parry their weapon off, or their hand. Why would I be fighting somebody who's empty-handed with a stick? Maybe they're bigger, maybe they're faster, maybe I just got off guard and I happen to have a stick in my hand. Regardless of the point. But let's say I'm fighting somebody with a stick and I want to use Kaju with it. Okay, so as I parry, I take their stick and I push it off to the side. Okay, that's enough not to get hit. But what if I modify it a bit? I'm using both of my hands and I parry, and oh, what if I pull them in? So now I pull their arm in. Oh, this kick becomes a lot easier when they're closer. Now I don't have to worry about whether or not they're in range. I can just take this kick out. I can do the second strike, and then I can once again finish. Now I have a whole bunch of ideas. Now I'm putting myself in a different range, not because I'm using different systems, but because I'm thinking of those systems differently. I did a blend, and now I can evaluate the blend of what is useful, what isn't. And if I continue to do that, I hope when it's needed, it's going to come out. Because it's how we train things, or what we train the most, that comes out. We've heard that many, many times. So if we train things individually, will they automatically blend together, or do we have to train to actually blend them and actually go through the process of blending them together? For me, I have to blend them. I don't know, and I'm not confident enough that I would be able to use the right thing at the right time. For other people, it's going to be different because they dedicate the equal amount of time for each art. Maybe it does come out, or maybe without realizing it, they start putting things together. They're doing one art, but all of a sudden they're doing something else. And we've heard stories like that before. People in tournaments, in Kaju Kempo, their master comes up to them and is like, hey, that was great, but stop using FMA. Because that's what came out, because that was the base before they went into Kaju. Things like that do happen, but can we be proactive and direct the way that we're going to blend this stuff so it comes out when we need it, at the right time, at the right moment, and we can benefit more from the cross-training and the various arts that we practice at the same time. I don't have those answers. I only have ideas on how to continue training this. Whatever ideas you guys have, please feel free to share. How do you blend your arts together so they're useful to you and not just something you do outside of your base and you ultimately only use that one art for your practice? So, just a thought. Thank you very much for joining me on another one of Nain Short. Until the next one, as usual, 3, 2, 1, cut! And that is practicing them together. Because, at least logically, it makes sense that if I want to blend these things and have them come up naturally in a real life situation, then I need to actually practice blending them together. I can't keep them separate. And I wonder, these practitioners that we know of that have ranks in all these other systems, how do they go about doing it? Now, we've met other people in FMA who practice multiple FMA systems, and we've heard that, oh, in long range, I use this system. In medium range, I use this other system. In